Welcome back to Hidden Secrets. Another story, another mystery. Let's begin. Every morning, I gave $10 to the blind beggar outside my office. He wore dark glasses and held a sign that said, "Lost my sight, not my soul." But I knew a secret. He could see every penny I dropped. He thought he was playing me, but I was the one using him to hunt down a monster. And his glasses were about to shatter. My name is Vance, and I work in high-frequency trading in downtown Chicago. It's a world of numbers, cold facts, and predatory instincts. Most of my colleagues walk past the homeless with their heads down, but I had a different routine. Every day at 8:45 a.m., I stopped in front of Blind Ben. Ben was a fixture on the corner of Wacker Drive. He had the act down to a science. The slight tremor in his hands, the way he tilted his head toward sound, and the milky, scarred look of his eyes behind those cheap plastic shades. He was good. To the average tourist, he was a tragic figure. To me, he was a surveillance node. You see, I didn't just stumble upon Ben. I had been watching him through the telephoto lens of my apartment window for months. I saw Ben, miraculously, regain his sight every night at 11:00 p.m. when a black SUV with tinted windows pulled up to the curb. He'd hop into the passenger seat with the agility of an athlete, laughing as he counted the day's take. Ben wasn't just a beggar. He was a scout for a professional robbery ring. He sat on that corner specifically to watch the security rotations of the Diamond District across the street. He was marking which armored trucks arrived late and which guards took longer smoke breaks. I knew this because my younger sister, Maya, had been a victim of that same crew a year ago. They didn't just take her jewelry, they took her life when the simple heist turned violent. The police had no leads, no faces, only the testimony that the robbers seemed to know the building's layout perfectly. That's when I started looking for the eyes on the street. And I found Ben instead of calling the cops and letting him disappear into the system only to be replaced by another scout. I decided to feed him. But I wasn't feeding his stomach, I was feeding his greed. Every day, I dropped a crisp $10 bill into his cup. "God bless you, sir," Ben would rasp, his voice sounding like sandpaper. "Your kindness is a light in my darkness." "Don't mention it, Ben," I'd reply, leaning in close. "I just like to help those who really see the world for what it is." He didn't flinch, but I knew he heard the edge in my voice. What Ben didn't know was that the bills I gave him were special. They were tracked currency. Every morning, I spent an hour in my home lab. I wasn't just giving him money. I was giving him micro-transmitters hidden inside the linen of the bill, and more importantly, tiny, high-pressure ink embedded notes folded so small they were invisible to the touch. Ben's job was to take the money back to his handlers. I needed to know where the nest was. I needed to know who was driving that black SUV. On a Tuesday in October, the wind was whipping off the lake, turning the city into a freezing tunnel. Ben was shivering, his sign dampened by the sleet. I walked up, but this time I didn't just drop the money. I fumbled it. The $10 bill fluttered out of my hand and landed 3 feet away, near a sewer grate. I watched Ben's blind eyes behind the glasses. For a split second, the tremor in his hand stopped. His head didn't move, but his body tensed. He wanted to lung for that bill before the wind took it. "Oh, sorry, Ben," I said, making no move to pick it up. "It's just to your left, about 3 feet. Can you find it?" I watched the struggle in his mind. If he reached for it too accurately, he'd blow his cover. If he let it go, he lost the $10. Greed won. Ben stumbled forward, his cane sweeping the ground, but he pinned the bill with his shoe with surgical precision. "Got it," he muttered, his voice losing its raspy character for a second. "Thank you, sir." "You have a real gift, Ben," I whispered. "It's like you have a third eye." That night, I sat at my computer, watching the red dot on my map. The bill I had given him, the one he had pinned with his shoe, was on the move. The black SUV had picked him up. But this time, they didn't go to the usual apartment complex. They drove to an industrial warehouse near the Ship Canal. I zoomed in on the satellite feed. This was it, the hub of the invisible crew. But I wasn't going to the police yet. I needed Ben to play his final role. I had placed a note inside that specific bill. It wasn't a note for Ben. It was a note written in a specific shorthand used by the Chicago PD's organized crime unit, a shorthand my late father, a detective, had taught me. The note said, "The scout is compromised. The traitor knows. Move the haul tonight or lose everything." I was intentionally causing a panic. I wanted the rats to run so I could see where they hid the cheese. The red dot stayed at the warehouse for 3 hours. Then it started moving again, fast. They were packing up. They thought Ben had led a witness to them. What Ben didn't realize was that I wasn't just some grieving brother. I was the architect of his downfall. And the next morning, when I walked toward that corner, I wasn't carrying a $10 bill. I was carrying a handcuffs. The fake blind man was about to see exactly what happens when you stare too long into the sun. The warehouse by the canal was a hornet's nest. Through the encrypted bug I had planted in the sleet storm bill, I could hear the chaos. The note I had written, "The scout is compromised," had worked better than I expected. Criminals are naturally paranoid, and when you're part of a crew that relies on being invisible, the thought of being watched is a death sentence. "Ben, you idiot, who followed you?" A voice boomed through my headset. This was the leader, a man the logs identified as Vargo. "Nobody, I'm telling you, I'm careful." Ben's voice was no longer a raspy whisper. It was high-pitched and terrified. "The guy, the traitor, he's just a mark. He gives me $10 every day. He doesn't know anything." "Then explain the note, Ben. Explain why this bill has a sequence that matches a police surveillance kit," Vargo roared. I heard a loud smack, the sound of a fist hitting flesh. Ben groaned. I sat in my apartment, sipping cold coffee, watching the audio waves spike on my monitor. I wasn't just listening to a robbery crew, I was listening to the people who had killed Maya. Every time Vargo spoke, my blood boiled, but I kept my hands steady. I needed them to move. "We leave tonight," Vargo commanded. "The diamond shipment from the terminal arrives at 4:00 a.m. We hit it, we dump the SUV, and we vanish. As for Ben, if he's the leak, he doesn't leave this warehouse." The line went silent. I had a choice. I could call the police now and hope they caught them at the warehouse. But Vargo was smart. He likely had a tunnel or a backup exit. I needed to catch them in the act with the diamonds in their hands. That was the only way to ensure they went away for life. But I also had a problem. Ben, as much as I hated him for being their eyes, I didn't want him murdered before he could testify. I needed to give Ben a reason to flip. I opened my laptop and sent a remote command to the micro transmitter in the bill Ben was still holding. It was a tiny, high-frequency speaker. I played a sound that only Ben would recognize, the specific whistle my sister used to make. Through the headset, I heard Ben gasp. What was that? What was what?" Vargo snapped. "That whistle. It sounded like, never mind." Ben was losing his mind. He was starting to believe the ghost of a girl he had helped kill was haunting the very money he had stolen. At 3:30 a.m., the red dot on my map began to move. The black SUV was leaving the warehouse. They were heading toward the Diamond District. I grabbed my coat, a tactical flashlight, and my father's old police scanner. It was time for the final act of the play. The streets of Chicago were ghost white under the industrial lights. I parked 3 blocks away from the jewelry terminal and climbed to the roof of a parking garage. From here, I had a perfect view of the armored truck's route. The black SUV pulled into an alleyway. 3 men jumped out, wearing tactical gear and thermal masks, but Ben wasn't with them. They had left him in the back of the SUV, zip-tied and blindfolded, a cruel irony for a man who spent his life pretending he couldn't see. The robbery was clinical. They used an EMP jammer to kill the truck's electronics and a thermal lance to cut the door. Within 6 minutes, they had 3 bags of uncut diamonds. "Move! Move!" Vargo's voice crackled over my scanner, but I had already made my move. Using the smart city hack I developed as a side project, I remotely triggered the fire hydrants on both ends of the alley. Within seconds, the pavement was a sheet of black ice and high-pressure water. The SUV tried to peel out, but the tires spun uselessly. They were trapped in a cage of water and ice. "What the hell is this?" Vargo screamed. That's when I turned on the lights. Not the police lights, the high-intensity stadium floods I had illegally wired into the alley's power grid. The entire alley became as bright as a surgery room. Vargo and his crew stumbled out of the car, blinded by the sudden radiance. "Drop the bags," I yelled through a megaphone from the roof. Vargo fired a shot toward the roof, the bullet ricocheting off the concrete near my feet. "Who are you, cop?" "No," I replied, my voice echoing off the brick walls. "I'm the guy who gave Ben the $10 bills. I'm the guy whose sister you killed for a necklace. And today, I'm the one who's going to make sure you never see the sun again." I saw Vargo look toward the SUV. He realized then that the blind man in the back was his only leverage. He reached into the car and dragged Ben out, holding a gun to his head. "Back off or the snitch dies," Vargo yelled. Ben was sobbing. The blindfold had slipped. His eyes, those milky eyes, were wide with terror. He could see the gun, he could see the ice, and he could see me. "Ben," I shouted. "The bill in your pocket." "Press the corner." Ben, fueled by pure survival instinct, reached into his pocket and pressed the corner of the tracked bill. A massive, high-decibel ultrasonic pulse erupted from the bill. It was a sound so sharp it felt like a needle through the eardrums. Vargo screamed, dropping his gun and clutching his ears. The other two crew members collapsed to their knees. That was the signal. I didn't need to do anything else. The silent alarm I had triggered at the police station 10 minutes ago had finally brought the cavalry. Blue and red lights flooded the entrance of the alley. The police swarmed the alley. Vargo and his crew were pinned to the frozen ground within seconds. The diamonds were recovered, but the real work was just beginning. I walked down from the roof and stood at the edge of the police tape. Ben was sitting on the bumper of an ambulance, a blanket wrapped around his shoulders. His glasses were gone, crushed in the scuffle. Detective Miller, an old friend of my father, walked up to me. "Ethan, you almost got yourself killed. We found the trackers. We found the notes. Why didn't you just come to us a month ago?" "Because you didn't have the faces, Miller," I said, looking at Vargo. "Now you have the faces, the diamonds, and a witness." I walked over to Ben. The fake blind man looked up at me. There was no more "God bless you, sir." There was only shame. "Why?" Ben whispered. "You could have just called the cops on me the first day. Why the games?" "Because I wanted you to feel what Maya felt," I said coldly. "I wanted you to feel the walls closing in. I wanted you to realize that the person you were playing was the one who owned you." But then I leaned in closer so the police couldn't hear. "And here's the final secret, Ben. I didn't just track your money. I tracked your private offshore account, the one you were hiding from Vargo. I know about the $3 million you've been skimming from their previous heists." Ben's face went white. If the crew found out he had been stealing from them, even prison wouldn't be safe for him. "I didn't tell the police about that money," I continued. "Not yet. I donated it, all of it, to a foundation for victims of violent crimes in Maya's name. You spent your life pretending to be poor to help the rich steal. Now you're actually as broke as you pretended to be." Ben let out a hollow, broken laugh. He had lost everything: his crew, his money, and his sightless sanctuary. As I turned to leave, Miller caught my arm. "One more thing, Ethan. We searched the warehouse. We found Vargo's black book. It turns out Ben wasn't the first scout. There was someone before him, someone who worked in your own building." My heart stopped. "Who?" I asked. Miller handed me a photo found in the rubble. It was a picture of my office's security chief, the man who greeted me every morning and helped me search for Maya's killers. The revenge wasn't over. It had just moved indoors. I looked at the photo, then at the sunrise over the Chicago skyline. "Hidden secrets," I muttered to myself. "They always have a way of coming to light. In the city of shadows, the person you trust the most might be the one holding the knife or the blindfold." This story is a reminder that justice isn't always found in a courtroom. Sometimes it's built one $10 bill at a time. If you want to see the masks fall and the hidden secrets of the world revealed, subscribe to our channel. Your support helps us bring the truth to light, no matter how dark the street. Hit the bell, leave a comment, and remember, keep your eyes open. You never know who's watching you back.